Hey everyone, John here with Photography Life, and today we're going to talk about the crop tool in Lightroom. Now, the crop tool is a very powerful tool. You'll end up using it on a lot of your images. So today we're just going to briefly cover what it is, where you'll find it, and when you might want to use it, as well as giving you a few tricks and tips that you might not have known about. So let's go ahead and dive right into Lightroom here. The first thing we need to do is find the crop tool. So it's over here under the histogram. We have all these different tools. It's this far left one, and if you hover over it, you'll see crop overlay. The keyboard shortcut is R. I use that all the time, but you can just click on this as well. So let's go ahead and open this up, and you'll see our screen changed. Our image now has this box around it. When you move your cursor around, you'll see on the outside of the box, the cursor changes to these arrows. On the inside, you get this kind of crop looking thing that it matches what's over here. And if you hover on these thick corners or these points in the middle, it changes to arrows. Let's go ahead and talk about what each one of those does. Now on the outside, you can use these, when it turns to these kind of curvy arrows, if you click and drag, you can rotate your image, and you'll use that to straighten things out. So you see in this particular image, I have a lot of straight lines. You typically want to have these lines parallel with the sides of the image. It's just more visually appealing. Things look better when they line up with the straight parts of the image. So you can use this to go ahead and straighten out your image a little bit if you want to. Now, if you hold on one of these corners or on one of these sides, that is going to change the basically what part of your image is going to show in the final image, in your final photo. So you can drag that in, and you notice these two sides are changing. They're pulling in towards the center. If I do it from the side, then all three of these sides, the top, bottom, and left side, are going to change. The right side stays put, so the side opposite from where you adjust does not move. It's not affected. It's only basically the sides that are touching where you're pulling from. So if you notice, as I'm doing this, my image up here in the navigator is changing, so I can make my final image look however I want to and kind of get an idea of how it's going to look up here without being distracted by all this that's going on down in here. Now, another thing I can do, if I think that's about the size that I want, but it's not positioned properly, if you just click inside of this image, you can drag your picture around inside until it's positioned inside of your crop where you want it to. And again, you can kind of see how it's looking up here. If you're happy with that, just hit the Enter key and you have your cropped image. But it doesn't stop there. Let's get a little more detailed and see what else we can do with this tool. So I'm going to hit R to open back up the crop tool. You can see we have this current crop. I want to start over, so let's just hit reset and it goes back to normal. So let's explore some of these other tools over here. This first one, if I click on it and drag it into my image, I can go ahead and make a crop really quickly without having to pull the sides of the image in. If I just wanted to do a quick crop on their face, I could do that. Another thing I can do, if you notice, if you pull down more than sideways, you can change it to a horizontal or vertical crop. So you can change basically the orientation of your image with this tool as well, and you can do a nice little crop if you wanted to turn this into a portrait. But I don't want to do that, so let's go ahead and reset this back to normal and move on over here to the drop-down menu. Now here, if you wanted to change your aspect ratio, you can. So let's say I wanted to make it square. I can go ahead and click 1:1, and I'm going to have a square crop to work with instead of my original 2:3. So this is really useful if you wanted to get an exact aspect ratio. Say you wanted to crop an image to an 8:10. You can go ahead and do that, and then you don't have to guess what's going to get cut off when you print your 8:10. You can crop it exactly the way you want it to look for the final print. So keep this in mind. Usually you'll want to do as shot because that's how your image was created, but you can always go change it if you want a different aspect ratio for your final image. Now this lock is another thing that you might need to remember. Sometimes you'll find that it's unlocked, and when that happens, your crop is not restrained to the original aspect ratio or to any aspect ratio. So if you ever go into crop and you end up with something weird like this, then you want to go and check and make sure this is locked. And you can also do that by pressing A, that locks and unlocks it, but it's easy enough just to look at it and click it if it's unlocked. But now our aspect ratio is messed up. I'm going to go ahead and change this back to original, and that's going to get me back to my original aspect ratio. Now, a few more things. We want to straighten this image because you can see going across the top here, we have a little more of this space on the right than on the left, and the same thing on the bottom. We have a little more showing on the left than on the right. Let's go ahead and try this auto, and what this auto does is it auto straightens your image, or at least tries to. And you can see in this image it actually did a pretty good job. If I pull this in a little bit, you can see it lines up really well with the side. Another thing I like to do is just click outside of my image, and it brings up more lines that I can refer to. So if you can't really tell based on just these major lines that are in here, you can always get more by just clicking and holding outside of your image, and you can see how straight it actually is. And this is really important. You do want straight lines in your images typically, whether it's a horizon, whether it's a door like this behind them. It kind of helps the viewer to feel more centered and more balanced. If my image looked something like this, that's not balanced at all. And while they might look okay, the background is going to be really distracting. Let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. That is just an uncomfortable image to look at. So you always want to have your line straight. Let's go ahead and do auto again, and that's going to put it right back where it needs to be. We could pull this out a little bit, and there we basically have a nice straight image. Now let's go ahead and move on over to another image, and I want to show you where sometimes this auto fails. So this is just a quick image I took down in Big Sur in California. If I hit R, you can see the horizon is not perfectly level. This line here is straight and the horizon dips away from it a little bit. Let's see what happens when I use the auto straighten feature. It actually made it worse, and sometimes this happens when you don't have a clearly defined horizon. The auto doesn't always work, so you have to take matters into your own hands. And again, when we get these arrows popping up on the outside of the image, if you just click and drag, you can straighten it if you want to. Now, it's a little hard sometimes to tell how straight your image is, so here's a really good trick for you. If you hit the tab key, that hides these side panels, and you get a much bigger image to work with. It also allows you to make finer adjustments. So instead of when it's the smaller image, a little mouse movement makes the image move a fair amount. When you have a larger image to work with, it moves a lot more slowly, and you can really dial in your straightening in this horizon here, and that is going to work really well for pretty much any image. If you're having trouble getting it perfectly straight, just hit the tab key, hide these side panels in Lightroom, and you have a bigger image to work with. It makes your job a lot easier. Once you're done straightening, if you hit tab again, they come back and you can just move on with your editing. Now, I could have gone in here and messed with the slider a little bit, but to be honest, I never do this. One, it's really hard to control. It moves a lot faster than grabbing out here and dragging back and forth. So I never use this. It's just something that kind of is a reference. You can use the number, but I highly discourage you from clicking and dragging in here, and instead get in the habit of clicking outside of the image to rotate and straighten your image. Now there's one more thing that you can do if you want to work on getting a straight line here. We have this level tool. So you can click on that, and when you drag it over here into the image, you'll see we have this little crosshair. And what you want to do here is you want to click on one part of your image, drag to another part that, and you'll see it creates like this straight line, and that is what you're telling Lightroom is what the horizon is, or what should be straight. So if the bigger you make it, the better results you're going to get. So I go ahead, and if I click here, drag to there, and let go, then it just straightened my image based on that line I just showed it. So remember, that's right here next to angle. We have this little level. You can also hold down Command if you're using a Mac, or Control if you're using a PC, and you get access to this tool as well. So if I hold down Command on my Mac, click, drag, It's going to straighten my image based on that line that I just created. And that's pretty much it for the crop tool. As you can see, you'll probably end up using it the most to straighten your images, but you'll also use it to bring the focus in closer to your subject or to cut out any extra stuff on the edges of your frame. You can also use it to create custom aspect ratios, which is really useful if you print your images in different aspect ratios than they were taken. That's about it for today. Please, if you like this video, feel free to subscribe. We'll have lots more coming your way. Also, head on over, check out photographylife.com for news, tips, tricks, and gear reviews, and we'll see you next time.